think it's going live. Sweet. So yeah, we're going to be covering Art Book 2. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, it should be showing for everyone. Should just say Art Book 2 character design. Yeah, a couple of years in the chat. Sweet. So we're going to be going through the art book first. I'm going to explain roughly what we're going to be doing in each section. This will take us till after Christmas, and then we'll be doing some other cool stuff after that. Mostly for you guys that are on the next gen, there'll be stuff for the exam, which will be pretty cool because it's more practical, and hopefully we'll be out of lockdown at that point. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm not too quiet, too loud, just because I've not actually done a test run of this yet. You're good. Sweet. Cool. So yeah, we're going to look at the art book first, then I'm going to show you this week's work, which is basically the second part of the art book. We'll go through some of the silhouetting stuff, and there's actually a video on Classroom as well, which gives you a very good idea of what you should be trying to do for the silhouetting. I'll get to that in a little bit, but we'll go through the art book first. So art book 2, which is what's on screen. Let me put my laser pointer on, so it's showing up on the video. Sweet. Yeah, it's nice and straightforward. So online learning. So why are we doing this? To give you a chance to do some 2D work and concept art outside the syllabus, as it is only briefly touched upon this year. So most of the stuff, you usually get about 6 to 8 weeks per thing. So 6 to 8 weeks of 2D. That's it for the whole year. You'd only get 6 weeks maximum of 2D. I think you can need a little bit more than that, because a lot of people will do the 2D, then you'll do 3D, but then you go back and you do advanced 3D at the end of the year, which you do like 3D sculpting. And I think you kind of need a good 2D base to get that off the ground. So that's why we started doing the fundamental stuff rather than just going straight into character art. I wanted to do the fundamentals first. So over the course of this module, we shall be covering researching artists and or art styles. Mostly just art styles, but again, you'll see in a sec what I mean. Silhouette drawing and their importance, so why silhouettes are important to, if you want to be a concept artist, why getting your ideas out super fast rather than focusing on one piece at a time, especially when you're just starting out doing ideas, is massively important. What makes a good character design? That's going to be in a couple of weeks. We're going to look at shape and flow. We're going to be going over sort of stuff with colour theory, why colour theory is important, and then we'll also be going over like iconic storytelling through design as well, which is the next point. So how you can tell a character just on the way they look. There's a really interesting series I'm going to show you guys where they delve into fighting game characters, where they look at how 2 games have basically taken the same concept of a character, how one's done it really well and one's done it really badly, but both tell a really interesting story just through the way the character looks. So your task throughout the workbook will be to work towards creating a character based on a setting of your choice. Your choices to begin your research and development are the following. So these are your choices. I have had people email me saying, can I do this, can I do that? If you can work your idea into one of these, that's perfectly fine. So cyberpunk / futuristic / mech enhanced, which is the first one. One, because I'm really excited for cyberpunk, I thought this would be really cool. And 2, it gives you more options, because obviously with cybernetics and futuristic stuff, you kind of got a little bit more options in terms of, I want to give my guy a gun hand, or I want to, give them robot limbs, or I want to make them have cybernetic eyes or whatever. Gives you a lot of, if you're really sort of creative and wanting to make something that's a little bit out there, you can go right ahead with that. Old West, so this is Cowboys, so there's a lot of stuff you could do here. You don't have to do a main character. Something that a lot of people said they wanted to do. They just emailed me over the week going, I want to try this, I want to try that. I think a lot of people say, they're going to make the main character. I think a lot of people think internally they want to make the main character. If you wanted to just do something like, say for an Old West, you wanted to do a prospect, like a gold miner, or you wanted to do just a standard bar worker, you could do that, especially with Middle Ages as well. You don't have to do like a knight, you don't have to do a combat character. You could do something like a villager, or you could do a person of royalty, or you could do a noble, or you could do a farmhand, or something along those lines. You don't have to just make it, this is the combat character, I'm going to make my person with, they're going to have swords and armour. Try and think a little bit differently. Try and think of something that might challenge you a little bit more. Superhero villain. This one a lot of people have struggled on when they've asked me if they want to do it, because they think that they are just basically copying another superhero. That's not it at all. With this, especially with the research section in a minute, I'm going to explain. You want to try and come up with, okay, what does my character do? What can my character, my superhero, supervillain, what's their main trait? So if you're thinking of something like Iron Man, well, he's got a giant suit of armor, but because he's got a giant suit of armor, he doesn't need to be 8 foot tall and as wide as a shed. That his ability is built into the fact that he's a small guy with a hyper intelligent brain who has a suit of armor that does all of his powers for him. You could worm that into, again, cybernetic, cyberpunk futuristic stuff. A lot of these things you can actually mix between, and that's why I'm asking people to do 2 bits of research, because you might see there's a crossover between them. The last one's Noir Detective. This one I put in there as like a kind of see if people are going to pick up on it. It's a lot harder to find noir detective stuff that's original. So a lot of people will think immediately stuff like Casablanca, the film, or they'll think of like LA Noire, which is just very stereotypical. They've got hats and long trench coats and stuff. You've got games like Snatcher. You've got stuff like Booker DeWitt from Bioshock Infinite is sort of a noir detective. It doesn't have to be black and white noir, but you want to have that sort of grungy detective look. Stuff like that. Just try and get you out of your comfort zone a little bit, because if I just gave everyone open brief, they're just going to make superheroes and they're just going to make their own OCs, and it's kind of, that's not what this is about. This is about pushing yourself a little bit. You will begin your research by investigating your genre of choice to gather reference material to work from. So every good artist will say work from reference. I don't know any artist personally that say don't ever use reference, it stifles creativity. Purely because if you're working from reference, obviously you can take stuff from that. That's already been captured, or that's already been used as, if you're using reference images of someone else's drawings, you're looking at someone else's interpretation of something, which can be a benefit, but it can also stifle your creativity. So try and find as many reference images as you can, because that will help you come up with your own ideas internally, and you'll just automatically draw it on the page. We will be looking at how closely your design follows your research. This is important. So don't do a load of stuff on medieval knights, how their armour and everything's really cool, and how, I've had people saying, ooh, can I make a dragon sword? I'm like, well, if you've got research to say that dragon swords are a real thing, that's cool. And we had a student last year who was doing, I think they were doing a medieval one, and the character had wings, and the character had dragon armour, and it basically looked like a Skyrim mod. And when it came to research, all they'd done is research Skyrim mods, and it's like, that's not what we're asking. We're asking you to research real things. Obviously, for the cyberpunk futuristic stuff, you can't really find it, as it's not a real thing, but you could look at how we have modern cybernetics, or like implants, or robotic limbs or artificial limbs, that sort of thing. You could look at that and adapt it. Your character does not have to be bipedal. That means they don't have to have 2 legs, so humans. But you must justify in your design and in your actual words and your evaluation why you've chose to go something different. So if you're doing the cybernetic one and you want to give your guy 4 legs, I mean, more power to you, but if you can't justify why, other than the fact of it looks cool, if you can't tell me for a storyline reason or a storytelling reason why your character has 4 legs and you just made it look cool, that's fine, but it's not going to show as well. Your design's going to suffer because of that. You kind of want to be able to tell from a glance why your character is your character. We'll get into that when we cover silhouette in a minute. So the research section. So this is what should have been done last week, but obviously some people haven't done it, which is perfectly fine. You've got time. So your research task part 1. Here you will create a basic mind map going over a few of the genres and their viability. So basically pick 2 of these. So pick 2 that you think you could do something with, draw them on a mind map, and then sprout stuff off. So for example, Wild West, you could go, well, I've got the cowboys, obviously, you've got a prospector, you've got a tavern owner, you've got the people that work in the tavern, you've got townspeople, you've got just cattle rustlers, you've got train robbers, you've got all these different things you could look at. Have a look at the ideas, and then once you've thought of a character, maybe think, okay, what sets them apart? So obviously, if you've got just a Lone Ranger type, you've got, okay, well, are they wearing a bandolier? Are they wearing a scarf or some sort of poncho? What type of hat are they wearing? What would their attire be? Would they wear spurs or cowboy boots? Look into all them details. So as I said, the research section shouldn't just be a 5 minutes, I'm done. It is more you looking at the viability of what you could draw if you could push yourself. The cybernetic stuff with the cyberpunk stuff, that's going to be like a lot of creativity driven, so that's like the most open brief, whereas the noir detective, that's the closed off brief. So kind of them in order of difficulty, but I said it's entirely up to you which you think is easiest. So you put your mind map on here and you kind of explain it. So this is to help you come up with ideas that more easily flesh out and iterate on. So this is where you would put your ideas and then pop them on here and then write a little bit on each one. You can annotate over the top, you can annotate at the side, we don't care. If you want to duplicate a slide to talk about maybe you've done a mind map for each rather than putting both of them on one, that's perfectly fine. As long as you get like 2 different genres down and written a couple of ideas, that's fine. So research task part 2. So pick one of your genres, and then here is where you will place images based on the genre you've chosen to base your work on. So if you've picked Wild West, look at Wild West attires. Don't look at in-game assets yet. Look at, okay, what did they wear? What did the character I want to do? What did they do? What did they wear? What was the setting? You know, what props would they use? So if you're a tavern owner, obviously they're probably going to have some sort of hand towel. Maybe they'll have some sort of apron or, you know, covering, because obviously they're going to get splashed with stuff. You know, would they have a gun on them? Maybe, who knows? Maybe they get robbed. These are sorts of things you'd want to think about. Annotations are also highly recommended to help us understand your thoughts and what aspects have inspired you the most in this way. So look at what is in the real world or what we have and then base your stuff on that. You can take other people's concept art if you really like it and you think this will show what I kind of want to aim for. That's fine, just annotate it and tell us why. You can, again, with the same one, with the last one, you can duplicate the slide if you want to use it again, so you can add more stuff on. Or you want to annotate specific parts and highlight certain bits, you're more than welcome to do that. And then research part 3 is based on a game. So here is where you will place images based on a game that falls into your genre. So cyberpunk, obviously you've got cyberpunk, you've got stuff like Siberia from years ago, Too Human was another one. If you basically Google cyberpunk type games, Blade Runner's on there, Shadowrun's on there, you know, there's loads of games that fall into every single one of them. Even superhero games, you've got Spider-Man, the Avengers, you've got even the Lego games, technically, the Lego Marvel games you could use, X-Men Ultimate Alliance, Superman games. There's so many on there that you can use as inspiration for how your character's going to look. Even stuff like Infamous, that's not actually a superhero game, but you play a superpowered human. You think outside the box a little bit. Same with the last one. Annotations are highly recommended so we can see your thought process. So silhouetting. So silhouetting is a difficult one for people to get a hold of because it's something that probably none of you have done. I didn't do it until I went to university and I did this as a degree. So I completely get why people are getting confused. What I don't want to see is you taking a character you found online, tracing around them and just colouring them in black. That's not silhouetting. What I'll do is I'll go through the presentation for silhouetting first, so going through the actual silhouetting process, and then I will go through the actual task at hand. So silhouetting. Welcome to silhouetting. I'm currently using my Wacom tablet, so if it skips a couple, it's because I've pressed it too many times. So fast idea generation for helping your creative juices flow. So there's a lot of text in here. I'll try and paraphrase it. If you want to read this at your own pace, there is the presentation on Classroom. There is also the video on silhouetting as well, which you can watch in your own time. So what is silhouetting / thumbnailing? It'll be called one or other of these, depending on where you go. Silhouetting is more focused on black and white images, whereas thumbnailing is kind of getting your outline done and designing everything. So they fall within the same category. So it's hard to get into some people's heads, but thumbnailing is one of the most important steps in the creative process. Thumbnailing and eventually picking an idea defines what you'll be doing in every other stage of a project. By fleshing out thumbnails first, you can eliminate ideas that just don't work or you don't like. You can also stumble onto small elements, features, curves, lines, and perspectives that you do like. We basically use this as, imagine timing yourself. You've got to draw a character in 30 seconds. Go. It's one of them where you want to get your ideas down as fast as possible so then you can iterate and put more detail into them later. It's better to do 10 thumbnail sketches, pick one that works and take elements that work from others than it is to have one design, try and draw it out, the lots of stuff there, and then reiterate and go back over, because that's going to take you more time. If you skip thumbnailing and dive right into a piece, you're left cleaning up lots of things along the way. The initial idea may be cool, but you'll likely end up refining certain concepts, revamping others, and spending excess time refining some ideas to be clearer. By removing restrictions on rendering and attention to detail, which basically means you're not spending 6 hours trying to draw someone's face, you can put down ideas much faster. This shifts your focus onto ideas themselves rather than making them look pretty. The initial part of any design should be getting a rock solid base rather than making it look pretty, because you're going to make it look pretty at the end regardless. Why spend time at the beginning trying to make something look good? You know, why polish a turd when at the end, you know, it's still a polished turd? If you can shape that into something useful and then polish it up, you've got something useful. What you want to aim for is getting bold, contrasting shapes onto a page so you can then refine them later. We will discuss the importance of shape in a later presentation, so that goes back to our character design stuff. So why do we use it? The goal of thumbnailing is to put down concepts onto paper, trying different designs as you come up with them in your head. Attempt different perspectives, tones, locations, sizes and features without overthinking too much. These rough sketches are not meant to be finished concepts. They don't even have to represent finished concepts, but more like ideas leading towards a finished design or concept. You want to sketch with no pressure and complete freedom. So that's a lot of a thing that a lot of people struggle with, is they will turn around and go, well, I've got this idea in my head. It's like, cool. And then the finished piece looks nothing like their final design in their head, because they've got this idea in their head. By the time they finished it, the idea's changed about 6 times. So it's never going to look as good on paper as it does in your head. So what you need to do is you need to get them ideas down, drawn out, and then move on to the next one before your brain can come up with something else. Which is why humans are a lot better at typing than they are at writing stuff down with a pen, because our brains work a lot faster than typically we can write down. But typing, we're a lot faster. So many artists will ask, how long does it take to complete a thumbnail? It's not an easy thing to answer, and depending greatly on the idea you want to put down, it can vary. I'd say limit yourself to somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes per thumbnail. 10 minutes a thumbnail is probably about the average. If you're trying to get stuff just down really quick and you've prepared a little bit beforehand, you can do them probably 3 to 5 minutes. Once you find something you really love and want to flesh it out, that's when you might move on to thumbnailing into further exploration and detail rendering. So taking your initial concept, and I'll show you examples in a second, taking an idea and then refining it will make a better product in the end. But the less you're thinking about the amount of time being spent, the more you feel and the more fun you'll have. So drawing this stuff, this shouldn't be tedious, this shouldn't be boring. If it is, you're doing it wrong. This should be a case of, I'm feeling really creative, cool, let's draw some cool stuff over the top of this, but not worrying about, well, have I drawn the spikes correctly? Have I made the face right? This initial part is all about making your ideas known, getting them down, and then moving on. Thumbnailing allows you to be quick and loose, and you don't have to be adamant about finalising anything just yet. You just want to show off some ideas and create some cool concepts that you can spin off later with the supervision or with the supervisor. So, this is an example of thumbnailing, okay? So, I will try, if it'll let me zoom in. It will not, cool. So see how they've got basically the same base shape for every character? It's all the same underlying character shape. But what they've done is, instead of drawing the same character out 14 times, 15 times, 20 times, 100 times, they've just gone with one base shape and they've gone and done all their ideas over the top. This probably took them, what, maybe an hour at most, maybe, to get all these done, because they're not using a whole lot of, oh, well, I've got to sketch this, I've got to draw the lines of this dress, oh, I've got to change her hair, oh, I've got to show this and that. Using just 2 to 3 colours, they've managed to show like 25 different ideas without it being super over the top. Does that make sense to people? Like what I'm trying to get at? Is that yeses in the chat or no's in the chat? If that makes sense. Yeah, does everyone else feel the same sort of way? Would they get what I mean by thumbnailing? You are allowed to find a base model. So say you find a pose online that you really like, you are allowed to use that. You are allowed to sketch your own ones out. If it's something that's kind of weird, you know, you are allowed to do that. There's nothing stopping you from taking a base shape you find online and refining over the top of it. What you don't want to do at this stage is find a character, draw it out entirely, and then add little bits and pieces. What you want to do is you want to be like, I've got this idea, cool, draw it out really quick. Oh, I've got this idea, kind of draw it out really quick. So, for example, say this sort of queen character down the bottom here is completely different to this one. But they're using the same base shape, the same underlying model, but they're two completely separate characters. Whereas if you tried to draw this, and by the time you'd got to like her gloves, you're probably halfway through working on the crown, it would look disjointed. What you want to do is just get them down, draw them down as fast as you can, and then move on. And then you can pick the bits and pieces you like. So like maybe, ooh, I like the shoulder pads of this one, but I like how the boots here work. The hair here is really cool, or maybe try it with this hair instead. You know, it's just getting your ideas down, that's it. It's another one. So it's a little bit more advanced. So they've drawn everything out themselves, so none of these are like, you know, pre-made. They're not all the same model, but you can see how they've not actually gone in and drawn every single part of the boot. They've just drawn the base shapes of the boot. They've not added laces, they've not added the tongue of the shoe, they've not added knee pads, they've just done base shapes, and they've used 3 colours, that's it. They've used a black, a mid-grey, and then a whitish cream colour, just to show highlights, that's it. That's kind of what you want to try and do by the end, is have enough detail to show what you're aiming for, but not like you've drawn every single nut and bolt on a gun, or you've not drawn every single rivet on a mask, or you've not drawn every stroke of fibre on a cloth, you know, on a piece of cloth. You want to just get in there, get your ideas down and go. It's another good one. So this is where you'll probably end up starting off, is if you're trying to come up with a character and a hero, what's called a hero pose, this is where it is. So this is kind of what we want to expect. Obviously, you may not be able to draw to this level of detail. That's perfectly fine. Everyone has to start off somewhere, but this is what we wanted to see. So this is your iteration of characters. So this probably took them, you know, maybe 5 minutes a piece trying to get everything refined. I'll go through. There's some very rude person outside my house. So this is exactly what we're after, is showing this, you know, there's a pose here, there's a different character here. They haven't gone in and drawn the jacket and then drawn the face and then drawn the pants. They've just gone in, and you can tell what a character's main focus is just from looking at them from a distance. You know, this is probably some sort of scavenger type. This could be a military person. This looks like, you know, because of the posture and the way the clothes are, they're not very sort of formal. It's all about this again. You will learn through practice. You can't just be really good at this from the offset. It takes a lot of practice. Anything 2D takes a hell of a lot of practice. This is another one. This is very fast. This is what we mean by fast and loose. So none of this is really highly detailed. You know, they've just shown very basic lines. This is more an advanced version of thumbnailing. So what they've probably done is they've probably gone in, they've started off with the grey shape and just scribbled in a shape they like, then refined it over the top with this thin sort of black ink sort of pen, and added in the rivets. So you're getting a lot of ideas down without having to spend hours and hours and hours drawing it out. If you were to highly render this out, you'd have to make every panel look really detailed. You'd have to show all the stuff underneath. You'd have to show all the wiring. Whereas here, I get a clear idea of what they're trying to achieve, and here I get a very clear idea of what they're trying to achieve with very minimal detail. You can do it for landscapes as well. It's not just characters. Landscapes are another good one as well. So here you can kind of tell what's happening. You know, this is some sort of lake with something in the middle. There's a person standing there. This looks like some sort of tunnel. It could be something else. It could be that they're going through space really fast. This looks like some sort of desert. You know, bold shapes that inspire you to come up with more ideas. This is, again, going back to landscapes. Two-tone landscapes. What's called a two-value. You know, there are lots of rocks and there's lots of ideas, but it's very, very simple. You don't have to know what type of stone this is. You don't have to know what this is. You can kind of tell it's some sort of big machine that's crashed into something. That's what we're after. So using a base shape. So when starting off, you don't want to worry about your high detail stuff right away. Your main focus should be on shape and readability. Readability is a massive thing. We're going to go into why readability is a massive thing. So what a lot of people find easiest is to go with a shape, whether that be a square, rectangle, circle, whatever. Pick a shape you like and then try designing something around that. Don't be trying to go super intricate straight off the bat. Big strokes and large shapes that are clearly definable are going to be better for you in the long run. So what I'll do is I'll show you this. So this is an artist called Laura Bevan. So having read the post she made about this, what she started off doing was she started making all these little huts here, and they all look kind of samey. She kind of got stuck into a box of, wow, well, it's always got to have this rounded roof. It's always got to have, some sort of flat underbottom. They're very, very samey. They look like they're part of like some sort of troll fishing village or whatever. So what she started doing was she started taking the thumbnails and just started, 30 seconds to a minute each, just coming up with ideas on the fly, just, stuff she didn't think about or stuff she was too scared to draw here. So she started adding all these bits and pieces, like a windmill. She hasn't drawn that in the initial design. She just thought, oh, windmill might look cool. Making it wider might look cool, or taller, or having 2 doors, or this round thing on top. I don't know what it is, but it could be something. What she eventually did was she picked this. She thought, this is probably the best design I've got, because it's very unique. It looks nothing like any of these. It's just a weird shape. And then translated it onto these. So this is her first design, and she's basically copied it over. Now she's got this sort of dilapidated looking one, and then a normal, like, fixed up version. So just taking ideas from this, stepping away from the, trying to render detail, like she's tried to render all the planks of wood, she's tried to draw all the straw on the hut, just taking that away and making a shape that's very unique and very readable. She's come up with an idea that's way better than these. She's done it with the character as well. So will it let me zoom in? It's probably not going to let me, but I'll try. Nope, it's not going to, never mind. So, the character stuff as well. So she started off with the silhouettes, so coming up with different ideas for what this shaman grandma, as she calls it, is going to look like. So she started off with something that looked a little bit like this. She started off with different headdresses. Does the headdress distract? Does it look good? Imagine if this was the first idea, and then she tried moving on to this, but just completely missed it. There'd be no basis for it. So they've gone through all these designs, iterated upon it, and come up with this. Then they've come up with different ideas for maybe how her shawl's going to look. So we've got one with tassels, one with that's just wrapped, one that's like tied up. Then they've finalised taking bits and pieces from all 3 and come up with colour ideas and taking it from that. So that's a step-by-step process. That's basically what you're going to be doing. Starting off with this, reiterating, coming up with ideas that are going to work into your final design, coming up with a colour concept or a colour design for it, and then rendering it out. Another one of Laura's, because I just found the work and she was really sort of explanatory about everything, was starting off with all these. So she was tasked with making some sort of like ritual stone. So normally people would just think of, well, there's, just a big stone. They'd come up with something quite boring. But thinking outside the box and thinking of different shapes and shape languages, come up with all this stuff like this one looks like kind of like a mushroom. Then you go into your sketches of what everything is. Then you come up with these different designs. It's all about the process of getting your ideas down, finding the best bits, picking something else, finding the best bits, rendering it out, and then coming up with your colours. And again, just more thumbnailing stuff. So these are all different poses. Again, not super detailed, but you can kind of tell what every character's after, what their goal is, what they're trying to achieve. Backgrounds as well. So this is a massive one. So notice how they've used basically this same horse model in pretty much every image, because you don't really need to draw the same horse and person 8 times. It's all about showing your scale, showing your design. So, for example, you can tell these are trees. You don't have to see that there's bark on the tree. You can tell just by the way it's shaped. Or this is some sort of ancient ruins, or this is some sort of spider's cave. There's not loads of detail on the web. You can tell what's going on. So, level of detail, keep it really simple. When you first start your thumbnail, you don't want to add detail that are unnecessary, or don't add to the shape of the character. So again, this is, this line here, don't rely solely on a cool haircut or a cool gun to tell a character. If anyone's ever played a Final Fantasy game past like Final Fantasy 9 or 10, you'll notice that the main character artist was a guy called Tetsuya Nomura. He just went absolutely ham, adding belts to every character, to the point there's a character whose entire outfit is just made of belts, because he really liked belts. Belts are cool. The characters look so boring. They've got no originality, because all he's done is he's just made the character look cool rather than fit and function. The character from a distance, you can't tell what it is. So, these are some very iconic characters. If anyone in chat wants to actually shout out any of the ones they see, I can go through them all if you want, but there's a couple of tricky ones in there if anyone wants to shout any of them out. Obviously, you can come off mute if you want. Daniel Van from Final Fantasy XII, such a boring character. Yes, that is exactly Ezio. So Ezio is on there. Yes. How did you know it was Ezio? So I'm guessing you're thinking this one's Ezio down here. The cape. So it's the cape, but there's the cape. Is there anything else? Link's on there. Now, why do you think that's Link? I'm guessing it's this one. Why do you think that's Link? Kratos is on there. So, you're noticing how a lot of these characters that people are picking up, there's not like, it's not all colours, it's not all, well, it's them because they're green, or it's them because of this. There's a lot of shape language, so I'll click on the next slide. So, the next slide, it tells you exactly who every character is. You can tell this is Bulbasaur if you're a Pokemon fan, because it looks like a frog with a bulb on its back. This one confused a lot of people. People thought it was Scorpion, but that goes to show, you know, if you have the same character for multiple designs and just change the colour, it becomes really hard to tell them apart. Pac-Man's an easy one. It's basically a pizza with a slice missing. Kirby's really simple because he's a ball with arms and legs. You know, if you can tell a character just from the silhouette, you've pretty much done well. Again, Clyde. Did you know the Pac-Man ghosts had names? Because I didn't until I did this. So, Pikachu, you can tell, is quite straightforward. Obviously, they've got a lightning bolt tail. They've got things that stand out. You know? If I was to give you these three, you know, does anyone know who any of these three are? Anyone want to take a guess? No idea. So, this kind of lore from One Piece on the right. You think it's lore from One Piece? Okay. Anyone else got any other guesses? So, the first one on the left is BJ Blazkowicz from Wolfenstein. Now, the problem is he's basically generic buff dude. So, if you see his silhouette, it's kind of, he just looks like a generic dude. There's nothing there. There's little bits to tell it's him, but you have to really know a character first. So, without seeing what his face looks like, it's really hard to tell. The guy in the middle, someone has pointed out it's actually a Fortnite skin, which is fine because it's got shape and body language. It's got very cartoony proportions, which is fine because that means that your brain will link it to stuff more often because, you know, the design's not something we're used to. The last one is from Call of Duty. Now, this is the idea of don't give a character a cool thing that can't be seen. So, you can't see his mustache from the silhouette, but you can in person. You know, if a character's entire personality is they have a mustache, might not be the best character design. You know, they might have the best story, the best voice, the best writing, but as a character design, if you can't tell who that is from a distance away, it kind of makes it difficult to say, oh, that's a really good character design. If we go back to Kratos, who is basically like a giant dude who's meant to be very realistic, you can tell it's him because he's got things about him. He's got the blades. He's got the fact he's built like a shed. You know, there's things about him that are very over the top and cartoony that work. So, getting stuff set up working for this. So, there's a couple of ways. There's no right way of doing silhouettes, but this is how I do it. So, I normally set a canvas up to about 3,000 by 4,000 in Photoshop. Obviously, if you're using paper, you can't really set a resolution because it's a real thing. Primarily want to work in either grey or off-white background, purely because if you have stuff as a white background, it's a lot harder to read. So either a mid-grey or a stony grey colour will do just fine. I like to turn my brush to have a little bit of pen pressure sensitivity. It allows you to sketch thinner lines, so that's your flow. You don't want to set the opacity to change because otherwise it's going to have all sorts. You're going to be able to gradiate things and actually show weight. That's not what we're after. So again, this is all just boring setting up stuff. So you can set stuff up like this where it's very scratchy. I'm going to show you mine in a minute when I go through. Obviously, follow this at your own time. It's on the presentation. I don't want to sit here and talk about Photoshop settings for half an hour. So this is kind of what you want to aim for. So this is the base idea that this artist came up with, which is they were tasked with building some sort of mech. Okay, so instead of just drawing immediately going for super detailed, I've watched Evangelion, look at me sort of design, what they've done is they've gone, right, cool, this is my character. This is what I've got this idea of maybe, they've got these big old robot legs and they've got a big old lance, right? But he's not spent 20 minutes trying to draw the lance. He's gone on to the next slide and he's refined it, so he's made everything look a little bit better. Rather than trying to immediately draw all the detail in, coming up with this idea. Now, if you notice between the two images, the shapes actually changed. The legs have become a lot thinner towards the bottom. The top's a lot wider, and he's added these shoulder pauldrons, which are the big spiky things, and then he's also doubled up the lance at both ends. So changing that up has immediately made it a lot more readable and a lot more fun looking, if that's even a thing. So this is why it's important to stick with just two colours for now. So 2 and 3 colour idea generation. So this is how you should be kind of doing it. So this is a little bit more detailed. If you use mid-grey as a background, you may want to use 75 and 25% grey instead of grey and white, because white is a very bright colour and it's used a lot for showing highlights on metals and shiny surfaces. If you have white as your base, the highlights don't look like highlights. They look like they're just missing or part of the background, okay? So I'll show you in a minute. So stuff like this, using white as the extreme background helps a lot, especially for stuff like this cave here. So if you had white as this bit, it looks like it's all open-ended. But if you have it grey and the dark grey and then a black at the front and then white at the back, you can tell this is a cave system. Someone's going in through the back. Again, stuff like this. So the backgrounds are all white because they're showing that that's the furthest point away. This is a good example of why greys work, because if you had all this as white, you wouldn't be able to tell it from the background. You would just think, oh, she's missing a bit of a shoulder. This is what happens when you have white as a background. You can't tell what to highlight and what's missing or anything like that. So it's really difficult to try and convey this, which is why grey backgrounds like this are a lot better. Unless you're going for something really simple. So this is another one where I don't know whether this has been cut out, whether this is, are these holes, are these highlights, are these padding? It's really hard to tell. So taking your, this probably, 3-4 minute sketch, just getting shape right and refining it and making sure it works as an actual visual language and a shape means you can go in and no matter what you draw over the top of it, it's going to look good by default. Okay, yeah, some of the colours are a bit wrong, some of the mountains don't look correct, but it still has weight. You can still tell exactly what's going off from that one image. So taking something like this and then refining it, going in, you notice how the background's here as well. It hasn't changed the mountains, they're still pretty similar. This dragon here, yeah, he's updated it a little bit just to make it a little bit more dynamic, but it still applies. So these are a load of useful links. Obviously, if you read the PowerPoint, they're all in there. So I'm just going to close that for a second. So the silhouetting section. So this is kind of what you're tasked to do. I've tried to make it so it's not super taxing and difficult, but you've got enough to be getting on with. So firstly, look through the presentation called Silhouetting, which we've done. Read at your own time if you want. If you've got any questions, just pipe up and say, can you go over this again? So your main task is find a human pose online, turn it all black and paint shapes and extra areas over the top of it using black to create 6 unique designs. You don't want to add any details such as facial features or clothing texture. Someone's just sent me an email. But you will want to show details that will protrude from the character. So again, nice and simple. You find a character pose online, maybe draw over the top of it, and then give me 6 iterations of what that's going to look like. So if you're doing a cowboy, then you find someone in a cowboy pose and then draw 6 very simple black and white images of what your cowboy is going to look like, or your cyberpunk character, or your detective. How's the coat going to look? Is the coat going to be super long? Is it they've got a hat? Is it that they've got something going off? Are they very gumshoe designed? That sort of thing. The extension task, if you want to get into that, is using a mid-grey in Photoshop. Try creating a 3-tone image silhouette showing areas of detail with grey highlights. You can use white as a highlight if you want. It's absolutely fine. So this is where you put your task. You want to annotate everything as we've always gone through. And then silhouette task number 2. Using just black and white inside of Photoshop or on paper, I want you to go about creating 6 different character silhouettes of your own shape and design. You don't want to add details such as facial features or clothing, but you will want to show details that will protrude from the character. And again, the extension task is adding mid-grey over the top of that. So coming up with your own one. So you've had a little bit of experience doing this with someone else's character pose. Now try it with your own. Come up with a character pose and see how you get on with it. Then we get on to sketching. Now, sketching is what we're going to be covering next week, depending on how everyone does with the silhouetting task. So, what I've got is I've actually got a character already in Photoshop, right? It's just a character pose I found online. I have 4 of them, so you can easily copy and paste them, which is why I suggest you do stuff in Photoshop. I have this mid-grey background. I think it's 18%. It might be slightly darker. But what I'm doing is, if you see in the bottom left, I just have this black and this grey, and if you press X on the keyboard, it will swap between them. So rather than erasing, what you want to do is kind of swap between them and just paint over the top. So I've got my character on this layer. I'm going to create a new layer over the top. So I could just draw, I don't know, anything over the top of it. You know, maybe they've got this super luscious hair. I'm going to give them some sort of spiky pauldron. Again, if you don't like the actual shape of stuff, you can change it. So I'm going to maybe make the texture just a little bit better. Turn the brightness up a little bit. That's better. So just going in there, you know, designing something rather than having to draw the hair, right? So I've got this sort of character design going on. Maybe I want to give them some, I don't know, give them some sort of fatter boots to sort of pile up at the top. And then they've got some sort of gloves on, so I'm just going to pile that out a little bit. There you go. Within a few seconds, you've got a character design that you can go, okay, so what's this here? What have they got? Well, then you can go in with your grey. So I'm going to do this over the top of another layer. I could go in and maybe, I don't know, it's going to have something going off. Let's have a look at some chest armour. So try and roughly work it out. So again, you're not spending forever doing stuff. I want to go back in, so I'm not actually using the erase tool. I'm going to go in with a black marker or the black colour. Go in, fix something if I don't like it, like there. I'm going to what was the online Photoshop thing, because I still don't have Photoshop. You should be able to access Photoshop now if you have it on your PC. I will try and find the email out. If you message me or send me an email in a minute, what I'll do is I'll try and find you the link that James has given us. The hat's too curved, I think. Oh, that was a previous question. So, I've got this armour here. What I'm probably going to do is I'm going to swap back over and add in just a little bit of detail into here, just so I know what's happening with this. Go back in, make sure I pull that out a little bit more. Go back in with the grey. And then this is where I would use white, so I'm just going to grab my white. Go back in with the black. Chucking in some fine little details here. Maybe he has, I don't know, something on his glove. Add Adding in the fingers. Photo P is the thing you're thinking of, yeah. Decrease my brushes a little bit, just adding in these details. At this stage, obviously, you don't have to be super neat with things. You can just go in. As long as you're getting your designs down. And again, it's not about having the most detail. It's about getting your idea written down, drawn out. You know, maybe, I don't know, I'm going to have... something like that in there. Go back into the black, make sure I'm cropping out enough. And that's it. That's a character design basically done. Obviously for the silhouette, and obviously spend a little bit more time. I'm just kind of trying to show you super fast how you do it. But if we turn all that off, obviously you could read that character in a number of ways, and it wouldn't really matter. And then all you have to do is, okay, well, I want to turn on my other characters, so turn them on. Just add it as another layer over the top. So we'll try with this one. Maybe I want to add it so this character's more bulky. So we're going to add some big old shoulder pauldrons on here. Sort of flare at the bottom. Or maybe he's got, I don't know. Some form of cape. You know, and that's just taking the same character and coming up with an idea. I don't know. Someone shouts something out that I could do with this next one, just so I can kind of prove a point. Or maybe I don't even like that crown. Maybe I'm just going to get rid of this bit here. Whoop. Don't click on that. Wing thing. So something with a wing. Okay, cool. So I want to give this thing a wing. So let us do one of these. So, I don't know. Throwing a wing in. This. Yeah, we're not being super neat. We're just trying to get our ideas down. Maybe I don't like the way that that's cutting in here. That's absolutely fine. We can just refine that. Go back in. Doesn't really matter. Maybe give him some big old elf boy ears. You know, maybe make the hands a little bit more claw-like. And there you go. So you can take very simple ideas. See, I've just come up with 3 different characters in the span of what, 4 or 5 minutes? That's all we're after. That's what silhouetting is taking a character and just coming up with ideas over the top. Maybe I wanted to, I don't know, take this initial character we've got here. I'm just going to kind of steal it. Like that. Just going to duplicate it and move it across so it fits onto here. Maybe I wanted to, I don't know, change the way that the wings work. So I'm going to come in, maybe take a chunk out of this here. Go back in with some pen. Take another chunk out. And then go to this one. Maybe there's a gash missing in this one. Go back in with a pen. I'm going to take the ears off, make them slightly smaller. Maybe he has, I don't know, weird horns. Why not? So, you know, we've basically come up with two characters here that you could read completely differently depending on how you look at them. So that's what we want you to do. So obviously if you take a character design from online, so you take in, I don't know, some sort of generic pose, what we want you to do is take it and then do this with it. Obviously spend a little bit more time. I'm doing this as a demonstration and the video is nearly an hour long. So does that kind of make sense to people? Who still doesn't get what we're after? Just waiting for people in chat to message. Who is like, I am too tired for this. I do not get this. I want to go sleep. That's a good thing. Well, hey, someone gets it. Nice one. Awesome. See, this is why I wanted to do more practical stuff. Makes sense. Cool. Is anyone 100% like against this idea and like, oh, I hate it. I never want to talk to you again, Gareth. Go away. Please don't be like that. That'd be not nice. Just waiting for some responses. So I'm guessing by the quiet that everyone kind of gets what I want them to do then. Everyone is dead, sorry, it's fine. I think everyone's just a little bit shy because they know we're on video, so it's all good. If anyone doesn't get any of this, obviously chuck me an email, I will then update the video, but that's essentially what we're after. And for people who are watching the video because they weren't in, or they're watching this in the next lesson, yeah, this is all we're after. We're not after you taking, you know, a Mario or a Zelda and then just turning them into, you know, an outline and silhouetting them and making them black. What we're after you to do is take a character pose, even if you want to come up with your own one, or you take bits and pieces. You could take bits and pieces of a character, turn them into a silhouette, and then draw over the top of them, and then come up with your ideas from there. Because even though you're using bits and pieces, you're still using reference to create something original. That's all we're after. Also, I've tried doing some silhouetting and have put it on my blog. That's fine, I'll check it out in a minute once we've finished the video. I think I'm going to probably end the video there, and then I'll upload it to Classroom for people who haven't seen it. Other than that, any other last remaining burning questions before I stop the video? Because it might be that you've come up with a question that like 40 people are going to email me about, and if I can come up with an answer now, it might help. Anyone got any burning questions? Relevant questions, not weird ones like where do babies come from, because that's not my department. Oh, what do you mean, you don't need? Is that what you were going to ask? No, you're not allowed to ask that question. There is a biology classroom. You can ask people about that. If that is everything, then if you want to ask me something, obviously in email, I can update it, it's fine. With that, yeah, that's the end of the video. Let me just stop the recording now.